not very well known, but they do a lot of hiring as well in terms of tech. So a brief background of tech hiring is that, sorry, I've not prepared any presentations to share, but you'll feel free to just ask any questions as we progress. So generally, the tech hub of the world is India, not US. But I know maybe because they make a lot of noise in terms of what they do, whether in movies, whether in their news, or yeah, just generally, they make a lot of noise more than India. But if you go to Silicon Valley today, you'll find that the people running the show are mostly Indians or people of Asian origin. You'll even notice that most of the CEOs in these tech companies are actually Asian. Talk of Sundar Pichai, talk of Satya Nadella, talk of who else? Yeah, if you Google some of these tech companies, you'll find that most of their brains are actually from Asia and specifically from India. So when it comes to recruitment, the landscape changed a bit when COVID came, but before that, there was still some changes in terms of companies scaling down their numbers of developers, general developers. We are talking of people in data, we are talking of people in AI, we are talking of people in cloud, any that you can think of. So there was a lot of change when it came to 2019, 2020 when COVID hit. And then now after COVID, we've never really recovered. And so companies had to check on how they can manage this new era in terms of how they run their business, how they scale up, how they scale down, how they make profits as well. Because, every business, their key point is basically to make profits. So I'll share some numbers that I read in one of the articles that I normally read every other month. It's a monthly article by Tech Job Fairs. So they say in 2023 alone, and this is in America, 262,000 people in tech were laid off, and this one is attributed to basically COVID-19, business missteps, as well as overhiring during the pandemic surge. And most of the companies today, especially tech startups, are started by tech people that are from the tech industry, and sometimes they might not know how to plan their human resources because they feel like if I need a user experience designer, then I can just hire. If I need this one, I can hire someone else. So they end up hiring like 10 people. And then when this hit and business is affected, they realize, oh, we could actually do with just 3 people. So this is what has been happening with these companies. You'll find that there was a time, I think in 2020, while we were working for some Microsoft hiring, you'll find that most of the engineers that were working in these companies did not want to go back to these companies because they had some, based on their experience, they had some reservations, which I actually learned firsthand from them. And it was very eye-opening because initially, if you'd ask anyone, would you want to work for Microsoft or Google? Anyone that is in tech would jump at the opportunity. But the guys that have had that experience working there do not want to go back. And the reason is these tech companies, number one, they are well advanced in terms of the technology itself. So there is not much being built in terms of the platform itself. Most of the work at the moment is maintenance, a lot to do with upgrades, system upgrades, things to do with maybe addition of maybe a few interface here and there. So you find that they don't really hire these engineers much because they already have a few in-house, and the biggest number that for maybe utilized, and hence we're going to do a little bit of what has already been done. So you find that these guys are moving to smaller tech startups that are giving them the opportunity now to build things from scratch. So that is what I learned a lot, especially from 2020 to 2022. A lot of the hiring we did was startups faced challenges in terms of management, whereby they hire a lot and then after 1 or 2 years, they want to lay off people again. So you find that the laying off continues, but the hiring again is happening. So it's a bit confusing to someone looking outside in, but if you're inside, you get to understand that it's a lot to do with their management as well. So back to is all about. So you learn that user experience is majorly on the customer interface or client interface, depending on how you put it. And that is basically what you see, what the customer or the user sees firsthand. They don't see the algorithms behind. They don't see um, the code behind whatever they are using, but that particular interface is what they get to see. And this one is majorly the front end side of engineering or software development, that is. So you find that based on the background I've given you in terms of the layoffs and basically the layoffs, you'll find that front end engineers today are the ones that are applying to these jobs that you'd consider UI, UX. The reason is, number one, they don't have jobs, and most of them are not entrepreneurial in nature, so they may not know how to sell their skill. So they would go for the next available opportunity that they could put their hand on. So you find that you as a UX UI designer applying for a role, but it's taken up front-end engineering, or even them get to learn these things. And a full stack engineer is basically someone that has knowledge on both sides of the spectrum. So they might end up having interest in this particular role. Number one, because they don't have an opportunity and they don't know how to sell their full stack engineering experience. So you find that you as a UX designer, you have that particular competition. And when you are given a test, because we as recruiters in the tech industry, we normally give out tests as part of the assessment for the candidates. So you'll find this engineer will beat you in that and they get hired instead of you. And then another angle is that of company cutting costs. So they know we have an in-house front-end engineer, and we also have a UI UX designer. But the front-end engineer can as well do this particular role, because for them learning anything is very fast, and basically they are actually doing the same thing. And then the front-end engineer gets to take up this particular role because the company is trying to cut costs. So in order to incentivize this particular front-end engineer, they end up maybe giving them an additional, maybe a smaller percentage, 25, 30% increment to their salary so that they don't feel overwhelmed with the work. And that one affects these niche skills like UI, UX, because number one, the company always looks at cutting costs. And number two, the company does not exist for your benefit as the employee. You actually exist in the company for the benefit of the owners of the company. So that is one dynamic that every other position would be great to know. They would be great to know that, because a lot, why are there layoffs, or why do you, so it's something to the company will try to safeguard itself before your interests. And then another angle that I would want to share with you guys is basically the changing dynamics of the tech industry, because it's an evolving world and there's a lot that is happening in the industry today. Initially, you would sit in a class to learn user experience design, but today you can do it online. And maybe even within a few days, you'd be already up and running. And then with the assistance of this new technology in AI, you can be able to actually give a command to an AI system platform, and it gives you code, or it gives you a design that you would work with. So you find that the market is very flooded today. We have so many software engineers. Today, if I post a job now, you'll be sure by 11 p.m. Kenyan time, I will have closed it, because I would have the number that I require, or the number of profiles that I require. And this is because between let's say 2012 all the way to today, let's use 2012 as the cutoff, all the way to today, the tech jobs were sold to be more paying jobs, highly paying jobs. And that is true. If you compare any other role in the world with a tech job, you'll find that these are well-paying jobs. So they were sold a lot to students, and they ended up moving towards that direction. And tech is wide. So you'll find we have data engineers, we have UI, UX designers, we have front-end engineers, back-end engineers, everything to do with tech, basically, from the platforms and maybe the what do we call it? The name, I've forgotten the name. But generally, tech jobs were sold much to students, and they ended up taking them a lot. So you'll find that today, even with the assistance of AI, we have so many tech, I don't want to call them job seekers, but graduates that are readily available. And remember, I said earlier, India is the hub, the tech hub of the world. So for me to hire a competent person that is also cheaper, I would have to look towards the hub, which is basically India. And I'll give you an example. There's a company that I've recruited for in terms of software engineering jobs. And for them, the preference is Just go to India. Give us someone from India. It's always someone from India because number one, if you compare with someone from Kenya, the one in India is much affordable. So they are a bit cheaper and you can be able to manage them much because they don't have many other benefits like medical cover and what have you. You know, these jobs you can do them remotely from the comfort of your house. So you don't need to give someone a commuter allowance and all these other things. So you'll find that these tech hubs will always be given priority. If a company is open to hiring worldwide, they'll go for the cheapest market, which is Asia at the moment. And then they'll also do what? In terms of expansion, because most of even the American companies normally look towards Asia in terms of expansion. So they'll move to Asia to set up a hub something like a lab, something like a tech school. They'll always set them in those areas. So from my experience, I learned that this is how they prefer because even the Microsoft and Google jobs, basically, most times they end up in the hands of the guys in Asia. So you might feel that you are very qualified, but you are overlooked, or maybe the recruiter never looked at your CV or maybe your GitHub portfolio. But it's normally about the preference of the employer as well. So it's quite challenging. It sounds a bit unfair, but that is the reality today. Um, Feel free to maybe share any questions that you might have because I don't have a really structured presentation. It's all about just sharing whatever I think is fit for this particular discussion. So if you'd want to specialize specifically in UI, UX, or you've already taken that as a path, there are things that you need to consider. And number one is, okay, there's a question, I think, from Maxwell. Let me go through them and then we'll be able to continue from there. So Maxwell asks, what do you mean is a niche? Okay, so what I mean is that initially it was a niche, like it was segmented to be one section of software development. But at the moment, what we look for is we are looking for a front UI, UX skills as well. Companies are cutting costs. They don't want to hire a UI, UX designer. They want to go to the extreme and look for a full stack demanding environment. But yeah, that is what I meant by the skill on a front end developer. So if you maybe if you felt that that was what you wanted to do, generally, you have to have this in mind that, you know, there's competition from that other side. You need to know that there's a front-end developer somewhere that will actually take up your role. And then another question from Lynette are, no, they're not our enemies, but it's all about the evolving environment in tech. So you have to know who is the competition in your end and who or where can you fit. in with your skills. If there's something else you can add up, then you eventually. I've studied human resource management. At the moment, I'm studying front-end developer. The fun of it, not for monetary. Maybe I can monetize it later on because I've done maybe a few small website jobs that we have sold out to people. You know, that is something you can do for fun or even for monetary reasons. But given that we have these resources to learn from, then bidding for a job and I can do the job as well, then most, especially if you go to these, what do we call it? I've forgotten the name. When you go to these consultancy sites, you'll find that someone just wants the job to be done and they don't care about your background. As long as you can share what you've done before, then you can be given the job. So these are the things that you need to consider. If you are already in the field, then your experience or your continuous practice will always sell you. And then there is another question from Michelle. Do you foresee the requirement for coding skills in UI UX designers becoming more prevalent in the future? Yes, already we can see that because at the moment it's okay. Yes, you will find even advertisements for UI UX jobs in plenty, but if you check on front end or front end development job ads, you might see that some of them have started incorporating the UI UX skills somewhere because they are trying to cut costs, as I said earlier. So it could be advantageous on your end if you would want to be fully engraved in this particular field. It would be good for you to see on how you can upgrade as well so that you are not kicked out of your passion. So get to learn or maybe to understand which other area can I venture in this tech field so that I have both the UI UX design because I love it and then something else to keep me in the field in terms of an income and even career growth as well. And then there's another question from Lucky. As tech is evolving, is UX changing into product design or front-end development? Yes, that is the trend that we are noticing nowadays because these jobs tend to be tied together. So you'll find that, as I mentioned earlier, someone is recruiting for a front-end designer, but they are also looking for someone with user experience or user experience, development skills, or design skills. So in the future, maybe we might see one of them phased out, that is the user experience, but not in its entirety because companies are becoming a bit crafty. So they may not tell you we are looking for a UX designer. They'll tell you they are looking for a front-end designer with UX skills as well. So for them, it's a cost-cutting measure. And yeah, for you, it might seem unfair, but that is how it is. And then Elizabeth, when you mentioned that the techies in Asia don't have the requirements for health cover and other things, which is why they are preferred, is it that they're covered by another entity or is it based on country employment regulations? Now, you've brought in an aspect of health in India or the healthcare system. Now, in India, as compared to Kenya, I believe most of us here are from Kenya. In India, the outpatient is very much expensive and it's not covered by most insurers in India. So what they do, they only, if you are purchasing a cover, you only buy the packages that will be given are mostly for inpatient and out of thought. So you'll find that most covers are basically inpatient, and the one that is
Simon, your video has lagged quite a bit. Hello? Hi, Simon.
the tele, what do what do they call it? The tele, is it teledoctor or something, where you just phone a doctor, talk to them, tell them the symptoms, and then they prescribe medication.
Hi, Simon. All right. We can hear you. No, we couldn't hear you for the last almost a minute. Maybe something we can try is switch off video, see whether it will improve the feed quality. Simon, can you hear us?
Can you hear me?
You're still breaking. Hello? Hi, Simon.
Yeah, I know.
Um, Apologies for the breaking connection. We'll try to reconnect again with Simon. In the meantime, I would recommend that we continue asking questions. I think one of the things that we are noting in this trend is that we have um, a bit of competition coming in from developers who know how to design, and that being exacerbated by the fact that there have been a lot of layoffs, and so the developers are also looking for opportunities where they can show off their skills in a way that makes them more marketable. And I guess a question for all of us is what what is the next step? What's the strategy that we should take in order to take advantage or at least mitigate the onslaught that has come? Um, Simon, can you hear us? Are you back?
Yes,
Okay.
can you hear me clearly?
Yes, we can hear you better now. Probably you can continue from there.
I don't know which was the last point that you had from me.
Oh, I think that the last point that we were hearing was the fact that India does not cover for outpatient, and so that may be the reason why they do not provide the same medical coverage as Kenya does.
Yeah. So basically, yeah, that's what they do. They don't normally have an outpatient. They prefer tele consulting, where you just call a doctor and they prescribe to you based on the symptoms that you describe to them. So that is it works for them. So for them, having a medical cover is not a big issue. They might maybe bargain for a medical allowance, maybe 1,000 rupees per month or something like that. But Initially, that is what maybe makes them more cheaper than these other maybe professionals from other countries. So I think I've answered that from Elizabeth. Uh, from Michelle again, I feel like it's quite unfair. Is it the same for front-end developers? Are they required to know how to design as well? I'm learning how to code for this reason, but I don't enjoy it as much as design. Is the trend changing or is the field saturated? I think it's more of the field being saturated because if a company is recruiting for someone that has an extra skill and for them they go for the designing as an extra skill, then they'll most likely settle on the guy on a front end developer with designing skills as well, because front end is basically uh, majorly designing the user interface as well. So yeah, it's I would say it's more of saturated rather than the trend. Okay, or the saturation is now forcing the trend to change so far. And then another question from Maxwell: what works better, being a design generalist or a specialist? Um, A generalist would work more given the dynamics of the current market. Um, so if you would are very much into design, then you would consider being a generalist as well, so that you have that competitive edge. And then is the trend to hire devs who know how to design only concentrated in startup environments, or is it prevalent in more mature companies? I think it's more prevalent in startups because, number one, at the moment, startups are the biggest in hiring at the moment. Most of the jobs that you will see around, any tech job, any design job that you'll see is from a company maybe that you've not even heard of before. But yeah, those are the ones that are hiring mostly at the moment. So they're the ones that are coming up, or they are forcing these new uh, rules in the game. And therefore, um, the best thing is just to comply with them. So if you can add a new skill, then you'll be on the safer side. If you can try to learn front end and then have the design as a backup or hand in hand with the front end, then you'll be in a safer position if you want to make it your full-time career as well. Because as I said earlier, people are learning, people are upskilling online. They don't have to go to a class. So you can imagine how many of them can do that free of charge. We have many sites that are giving these lessons free of charge. So it's a bit tricky because now the market is open for everyone. Anyone can do anything at the moment. Personally, I started studying front-end development free of charge. I've never paid a coin anywhere, and I've actually done close to 25, 20, let's say 20 to 25 projects so far. And maybe due to the demand of my current job, I've not done anything this year. But once my schedule regular rises, then I'll be able now to continue in this. But um, there's another question. Let me read it out. Not a question, but an opinion. I think UX can no longer exist as an individual career path as companies choose to prioritize a user-centered approach in creation. It will become a necessary skill to have, especially for engineers. Yeah, that is correct. As I said earlier, nowadays you just find designers clustered in front-end engineering. So it would be more of later on, I foresee it becoming just another skill on the software engineers or front-end engineers for that matter. And then for Michelle, how do companies now expect UI UX designers to collaborate with developers and engineers in teams where coding skills are expected from us? Sorry, I didn't get that properly. How do companies now expect UI UX designers to collaborate with developers and engineers in teams where coding skills are expected from us? So at the moment, the companies that can accommodate UI UX designers do so without much effort. But the ones we are afraid of are the ones that are coming up, because they are learning that you can actually get or you can get one person at the expense of a UI UX designer, someone that can do front end, but they have these extra skills. So these are the ones that are the biggest threats. They're really hiring. So that is like something to ponder. And then from Maxwell again, I don't know about you, but my experience is that devs and designers think differently. Therefore, the value is in the way we solve problems. If we can demonstrate more value than just pushing pixels, I bet we can bargain for more leverage in the profession. Yeah, that is correct. You'll find that later on, later on, they realize they need a designer, because let's say the front-end developer, most of them are not very good in designing. Let's just say the developers, either front-end, back-end, or full stack. So for them, the traditional ones may not be good in designing, but the modern ones, or the ones, let's say, even if you cut off from 2016, 2017, they're trying to incorporate these extra skills on themselves to make themselves more marketable to this new changing market as well. So yeah, another one from Michelle. So the key here is to go for big companies or upskill to be a super designer who can code. Pretty much that. But again, given that the market is very saturated, I don't know how you can go about bargaining or maybe selling your skill. It's a bit tricky, but yeah, if you can sell your skill, well and good. But what I've noticed so far is very few companies are going directly for a UI UX designer. There's one that I was hiring for, and after we've submitted candidates, they told us they already have a front-end developer that can do the work. So those are some of the feedbacks that we receive from these companies. It's a bit tricky. And given that they're the ones now writing the rules, I don't know how we will counter that. But that is just the new reality for now. If you can get an extra skill, if you can do some coding as well, or if you can be a super designer and be able to market yourself as a super designer, then you can be able to uh, to stay afloat in this market. But another thing I have noticed is maybe the ones that focus mostly in this field of designing are the ones that prefer to remain as freelancers, so that you just go for consultancy. You do the gigs on these other platforms like I don't know why I'm forgetting the name, but yeah, you focus more on consultancy as well rather than on full-time employment. So yeah, that is something you can think about as well. I don't know whether we have any more questions or comments that we can discuss about?
I think
But from, yeah.
maybe I just wanted to add a point, and I know you probably have a bit more to go. One of the things that I've noticed is as I've been growing in my own design career, and in a bit of a different market, I have realized that most of my time is not spent on Figma or on like actually designing pixels and like figuring out layout. That most of the design market, especially if you're going to start targeting larger organizations, most of your skills
Mm.
are going to be dependent on how well can you do user research. Things like talking to users to find out what exactly they are looking for, because the users know their problems and not what the best solution is. So a skill like interviewing users and doing really good user research, both in terms of qualitative and quantitative research, and then also writing. So skills that would be akin to product management. Skills like writing with clarity so that you can be able to communicate expectations. And those skills have become the things that are a lot more emphasized in larger and more mature organizations. And so if you want to differentiate yourself, and I don't know what your comments are, Simon, about this, but the ability to differentiate yourself will depend on how much more you can do outside of Figma than your actual design skills. I don't know whether you have anything you can say about that, Simon.
Yeah, I think that is pretty much the point. I think link it to what Michelle said about being a super, is it a super designer? Yeah. So pretty much being ahead of the curve, going out there to find out what are your, or what is the what's the client looking for, being ahead of the curve, getting to know what they can get from you, what extra they've never heard of, doing a lot of research as well would actually work out in your favor. Because even in recruitment, I'll give you an overview of what tech recruiters have gone through as well. At the moment, most companies generally work with short-term contracts. Could be 1 year, could be 2 years maximum. So what they do, and these are the big brands in the industry, that is Google, Microsoft, Glovo, Uber, whichever you can name, they normally go for these short-term contracts. And you'll find that even at the moment, we still have very many tech recruiters that are even themselves looking for jobs, and it's all about knowing how to adapt with the changes in the market, how you can be more useful to the to the user, how you can go out to them rather than wait for them to come to you. I think that way you would be able to remain afloat in terms of beating competition. So I think I don't know whether my comment is much in line with your question, but I think generally that's what I can say in regards to
Simon, you're breaking again.
uh, just giving putting in that extra effort in terms of
Hi, Simon. Can you hear
going
us?
out to the
Simon, can you hear us? All right. As we give Simon a moment, I'd like to open it up for audio discussions. If you have a question that you'd like to ask, please raise your hand and you can be unmuted as we proceed. I think I personally think that this is a really useful discussion for us to have because it's very easy for us to be stuck in a bubble, assuming that as we walk towards our specialization, that we are doing okay, but being able to get a reality check that the market has changed, and so we need to adapt with it is good to hear. So if anyone would like to contribute to this discussion, if you'd like to ask an audio question or just basically give a comment, please raise your hand so that we can know that you're there and unmute you. All right, Simon, you are back.
Yeah, I hope you can hear me now.
Yes.
Yeah, my internet is back, so yeah, I think now these problems should disappear. Sorry, where did I fall off?
I think we are concluding on the question of to what degree the skills that you have beyond just designing matter in being able to sell yourself. And I think the general comment we are saying here is that it would be useful for all designers to be cognizant of the changes in the market, just as you've said, and start figuring out what the next step would be. Would it be specializing towards development or specializing towards skills that are more akin to product management?
Yeah, basically product management comes top of mind when you're thinking of upskilling or just wanting to make yourself more relevant, I would say, more relevant to the market, then think in line of the product. If you have a target client that you'd want to pitch to, that is, if you are in consultancy, or if you are targeting a certain company that you'd want to work for, if you want to go for full-time employment, then it would be good to think more of the product itself, because everyone can code. Many people can code out here. What sets them apart is now knowledge of the product itself. What does the client want to portray to the market so that I help them in achieving that, rather than do I know how to code in Java or do I know how to code in whichever other language. So it's important to first always know in whichever field that you would want to fall in, you would want to first know how do these products evolve in the market. For instance, at the moment we are talking of AI, we have ChatGPT, we have these other ones from the other platforms. Google has its own. You would want to know, like, what is the future of that? How will it evolve later on? What capabilities will it be able to have in the future? With Initially it was just text. You would tell it something and it would give you, but today we can see you can even give it a command to design a photo or design something for you, and it will go ahead and do that for you. So those are the things that you think about when it comes to upskilling. And then there's a question from Michelle. Does having no code tools experience now count, or we have to learn how to write code for real? I would say coding in the future, it's going to be a basic skill. Um, just like maybe at the moment, every other company is using a computer rather than books, keeping records on books. The way typing or using a computer is a basic skill today, coding in the near future will most likely be any other basic skill. Even kids nowadays are taught in school from kindergarten or maybe junior schools. They're able to code and they're able to even write code for games. They can build something for themselves. Others are building things that aid them in learning as well. So it would be a necessary skill. So think about that as well. Which line would you want to start from if you want to grow in that area? And then I think another one is about I suspect that they are looking for actual code since they are building custom systems and no code tools only work well for landing pages and not apps or web apps. Yeah, so pretty much that is it. So the key thing is just to open our eyes and know where does the competition come from? What does the future look like in terms of this particular field of user experience designing, and how can we be well prepared to fit into the changing market as well, rather than the fear of being phased out.
So I have one final question
Yeah.
for you, Simon. Based on what we've seen, this has generally been a very a call to give us a wake-up call, a meeting to give us a wake-up call. But I guess the question would be, what is the action? What is the one thing that the designers on this call can do to set themselves apart when you're going to be looking at their CVs? Should they do so that if they can be able to call out to you to say, hey, I'm actually, please don't hire anyone else, any other skill set. I have what it takes.
Mm, okay, I'll give it maybe from my own research. This is not maybe verified everywhere else, but just from my own experience as well. I've only done like not even more than 10 UI UX jobs, and this is I'm talking about recruitment worldwide. I've done some recruitment for some US companies. There's one in New York, there's one in Chicago, there's another one in Canada. And you find that even as you check around for these particular jobs, you'll find that number one, they are very scarce, and number two, whatever they are offering is very, very low uh, as compared to these other jobs in the tech industry. So that tells you their priorities in terms of how they view this particular job as well. So when you think about these parameters, you'll understand that at the moment, having the extra skill would give you an edge in terms of being competitive as compared to just having the UX, UI skill alone. So, as I mentioned earlier, at the moment, what we are looking for, I'll give it an example. The last job that I did, the one that I was told, we actually have a front-end developer that can do that work. So they froze the hiring. And that was also a wake-up call because most of the others before, you'd find that even the candidates reach out via email and tell you, you know what, I'm no longer working for that company because someone else came in and maybe they're a front-end designer and they can still do this work. So my contract ended and it was never renewed. And maybe I spoke to the person that came in and they told me, they're the ones actually doing that. Or maybe someone else told me that the company never hired anyone else to replace me, but maybe the new guy or someone else that came at a different capacity, mostly front end development, are the ones that are doing that particular job. So I've seen it as an emerging trend in terms of uh, um, the biggest threat to user experience designers. So if you are thinking to maybe upskill, you would think about the front-end designing as maybe the next uh, frontier or the next skill that you can upskill to. And yeah, I think I don't know whether that answers your question.
It does. And maybe one last follow-up is when you're looking at front-end designers, what exact, or front-end developers in this case,
Mm.
what exact, or have you had any specific tools been mentioned that are popular that we as designers can go and start exploring? Any particular tools like Tailwind or the HTML, whatever. What language is being used in those requirements that we can be able to go and explore and add to our own resumes?
Basically, front-end designing, it depends on the client or what they use in their, maybe the systems they use. If it's Java-based, obviously they would want uh, someone skilled in JavaScript. But the most common one for front-end is basically JavaScript. That is what I've seen mostly. Um, these other ones are not very common. If you want to go, maybe these other platforms of Laravel, those ones are a bit deeper. Um, Java itself is a bit, I don't know, you'll find very few people that have done Java. There's a difference between Java and JavaScript. So in terms of front end, just as a start point, I would advise just go on HTML, JavaScript. HTML as a start, it's much easier. You can learn it on your own, or the best thing you can do is get someone that is already um, specialized in that just to guide you so that you know how to, once you, or maybe you know that you're making progress, they can be able to review your code and tell you pointers in terms of making your code shorter, in terms of reducing what do you call them, reducing this bulkness in your code. Those are the few things that can help you in advancing in that. And then once you're done with HTML, it goes hand in hand with CSS. CSS is basically the styling for the code itself. You can learn more about it. It's very simple, actually. And then after that, you can now dive deep into Java. Then from there, you will now choose which other path you would want to follow. But those are the basics that you can do for now. And those are the basics that uh, most clients would maybe ask for from you.
All right. Thank you, Simon. This has been a very eye-opening session. I believe it's the same for all of us, the rest of us as well. And so I appreciate you for taking the time to speak to us and open our eyes into the realities of the market. So as we come to a close today, I'd like to just read or go through what opportunities currently exist. There's a document, a Google Doc that was shared just a few minutes ago that talks about the job postings that are currently there, but I'm sharing it as well. And currently, I'm just going to go through them, both the jobs that are there this month and the events that are out there that you can probably go and join. So Made by People is hiring a UI UX designer. Go and apply for it there. Fusion Growth Partners is hiring a graphics designer. Apollo Agriculture is hiring a product manager. Poa Internet is hiring a design manager. Udigify is hiring a graphics designer. Start Network is hiring a graphics designer. Power Financial Wellness is hiring a product owner. FCA is hiring community associate. Cooperative Bank is hiring a UX designer. Encourage is hiring a junior product manager. And the links are in the post that just been shared just now. So please go and check that out. Then in terms of events, product managers are celebrating, product managers of Kenya are hosting a session on product backlog. You can go and RSVP there. I would encourage, especially if you're interested in growing your skills, if um, development is not a skill that you're particularly keen to going towards, I'd encourage you to start attending PM, product management meetings and events and growing your skills towards that direction. That's a different direction you can go. So check out that event there. Participate in a design challenge by Design Buddies and Hatch, and there's a link to visit that there. I'd like to ask, is there anyone here who has a job posting that at their companies that they'd like to talk about? Please post it in the chat as we go towards closing, and I'll call it out. All right. Now we've come to the tail end of our meetup today, and I appreciate every one of you for joining. I hope that you found this to be of value, and I'd encourage, before you leave, please post in the chat on a scale of 1 to 10 how much value you obtained from this meetup. If you can, then add a reason why. So on a scale of 1 to 10, how much value did you obtain from today's meetup? And you don't have to add the why. The rating is really useful, but we'd like to hear why if you add the rating. So please go to the chat and do that. I would really appreciate that feedback. It will help us to grow for the future. And as you add your rating on the chat, I encourage you to subscribe to our newsletter. If you do not want to miss another one of our meetups in the future, you'll be able to get that message coming in to you monthly. We usually send it monthly just before the meetup comes. So as a reminder, so please sign up for the newsletter there. Right. With that, I'd like to end, and I appreciate every one of you for joining the meetup today. And unless there's anything else, I'd like to end it there. Have a lovely, lovely rest of your, one day left in your February, and a wonderful start to the next month. And until next time,